Good morning, good evening, good night, depending on where you're at in your day. Let's start off with a morning, evening, night Bible study, whatever you want to call it. This is in Isaiah 43, starting in verse 18. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing, now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland. So let's just focus on verse 18. Forget the former things and do not dwell on the past. So this seems to be a lesson that we can learn all the time. It seems like something that God brings up. So if you look at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's wife, God firmly tells them that I'm going to rescue you from this calamity, but do not turn back. And Lot's wife turns back. And you're thinking, so when she turns back, she gets turned into a pillar of salt. And you might be thinking, well, man, that seems kind of harsh. Why would God turn her into a pillar of salt? It was because her heart craved the things that she was leaving behind. Um, I don't know Lot's wife, never knew her, probably never will, but she craved the things that she was leaving behind. She was craving those sinful things that were going on, in my opinion, that were going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. And that is why she was turned into a pillar of salt. Um, the children of Israel were told over and over again to leave the ways of the Egyptians behind. And they mumbled and they cursed and they got themselves into a lot of trouble. And even at one point, they wanted to return back to slavery, back to Egypt, um, and live under the Egyptian laws, rules, whatever these pagan practices that the Egyptians were following. They show that when Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai and talks with God. Um, they return to their old ways, making pagan idols and worshiping them. And because of this, the children of Israel, a lot of them, there were a lot that died in the wilderness when they were roaming for 40 years. And a lot of them didn't see the promised land because they kept wanting to return back to those things that in their past, those evil things, those idolatry, those practices of worshiping something other than God. And then here in Isaiah, again, 43, verse 18, forget the former things and do not dwell on the past. So I've had scenarios in my life where things weren't necessarily going all that great in the relationships that I was having at the time. And I would reflect back onto old relationships, old girlfriends that I had dated or wanted to date years ago, uh, wanted to, you know, revisit those things, maybe not physically, but in here, playing through these scenarios in my brain. And what that tends to do is it tends to um, take your eyes away from God, for one. It takes you into an area of sin in your life, possibly, because those relationships probably ended for a reason. um, the also I think when we allow our minds to fantasize about what could have been instead of what is now and fixing what is now instead of trying to replay what happened then, I think that's dangerous. I think uh, it is a way of Satan, his influence to get us to not work on now and live in a fantasy, try to revisit this old way of life, this old fantasy, and I just don't think it's healthy. I think there's a good reason why God tells us to turn away from the past and live in the now and focus on God's way and not our way. I know that our brains are very, very um, tricky, hard headed, hard to understand at times, but I definitely do know that uh, when we focus on what could have been and not what is now, it leads us into a dangerous path. Because I've heard a lot of different scenarios where people who've been in that situation where they've had their relationship isn't currently going the way that they want it to, so they get out on Facebook or some other social media and they contact an old boyfriend or an old girlfriend or a relationship from the past, and they try to re-engage in that relationship. And there's been a lot of relationships that have been a lot of divorces because of this type of thing. And I think that it's very, very dangerous. Obviously, when your relationships are crumbling for a fantasy or a relationship that happened way back in the past, that is probably not the best place for you to be. Um, it's just dangerous. Years ago, this was over 20 something years ago, I had a friend message me from my old military days, and he said, "Hey, this girl that you dated years ago wants to get in contact with you." But he told me, he said that I just want to warn you that she's in a relationship and she hasn't been faithful to the other relationships that she's had, and um, I was like, I do not want to re-engage. And finding out that um, she wasn't faithful to the relationships that she had was also a reminder that God had gotten me out of a bad situation, and I needed to stay out of it. So um, learn from your past, but don't dwell on it. Don't revisit it in your mind. Focus on the now. Focus on what you can change now in the relationships that you have. And it doesn't just pertain to relationships, but definitely in my scenario here, that's what I was talking about. Um, you don't want to focus on those mistakes that you made in the past either, because a lot of times you can't fix the mistakes. A lot of times, all you can do is um, ask God to forgive you, forgive yourself, um, have a clear conscience, and move forward and try your best. I remember one time it's kind of a silly example, but I was driving back from Nashville and I totaled my car. But right before I totaled my car, I had stopped into a gas station and filled up the tank. So I had a full tank, got back in my car, um, did something dumb when I was driving, wrecked my car, totaled it, and I'm sitting on the side of the road thinking, man, I shouldn't have filled up my gas tank. But I was also thinking, I shouldn't have done this and I shouldn't have done that. And that was just the devil trying to get me to get into my head and to make me feel horrible about the situation, instead of just saying, God, you know what? Take care of me, take care of the situation, and whatever happened, happened, and now I've got to move forward. And that's what I encourage you to do. Just, move forward. Every day, get into the Bible, continue praying to God, and be truthful to God. When you're having hard days, you're having really bad days, tough times. This last year was really tough for me, emotionally and work and just a bunch of areas in my life. But God was there every day. But you got to stay connected. So I encourage you, read your Bible, pray, and quit focusing on the past. Take care. God bless. Love you guys. Bye.